It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. The kind where the only sound you hear is the soft splash of water against the rocks and the occasional call of a bird in the distance. Lake Westcourt had always been a place of retreat, of family barbecues, lazy fishing days, and young couples skipping stones. But in the summer of 2012, that illusion shattered. Two teens exploring the edge of the lake near a restricted industrial zone stumbled on something strange. A large rusted metal barrel, half submerged, covered in algae and grime. At first glance, it looked like just another piece of illegal dumping. But then they noticed the chains. Heavy industrial-grade chains binding it shut. And a smell. Pungent. Wrong. Like death trying to rise from the deep. The sheriff's department was called in. What they found inside that barrel would ripple through the community like a shockwave. Human remains. A woman, curled in an unnatural fetal position. Her body degraded but her death unmistakably violent. Whoever she was, she had not died peacefully. The medical examiner would later confirm what was already suspected. The woman in the barrel had been murdered. Her skull was fractured. There were signs of blunt force trauma and ligature marks around her wrists. She had been bound, beaten, and stuffed into the barrel before it was sealed and dumped in the lake. The remains were identified using dental records. Her name was Darla Hennings, a 38-year-old single mother who had been missing for nearly 2 years. She worked as an environmental compliance officer for the nearby Creighton chemical plant. Her disappearance had been quietly brushed off at the time. She was said to be dealing with personal issues. Her employer claimed she had resigned and relocated. But her family insisted something was wrong. Now, they had proof. Digging into Darla's last known movements painted a disturbing picture. She had been investigating alleged chemical dumping violations at Creighton Chemical, the same company she worked for. Records recovered from her laptop, which her sister had preserved, showed she had documented several infractions. Emails between Darla and an unnamed source indicated she planned to go to the EPA. But then, her messages abruptly stopped. Her phone went dark, and within days, she was gone. One chilling voicemail she left for her sister said, "If anything happens to me, look at the plant. Don't trust anyone there, not even my supervisor." When police questioned Creighton Chemical's management, they were met with corporate stonewalling. Legal teams stepped in almost immediately. The official stance was, Darla resigned voluntarily. We wish her well. But internal sources painted a different story. One janitor, speaking under anonymity, told investigators he saw Darla arguing with plant supervisor Michael Derns the night before she vanished. Another worker claimed to have seen her crying in her car. Still, the evidence was circumstantial. There were no witnesses to a crime, no security footage, and no murder weapon. Just a body in a barrel and the creeping suspicion that a powerful company had something to hide. 6 weeks after the first barrel was discovered, divers dredging the lake found another. This one contained nothing but chemical sludge and shredded plastic IDs. Among them was the partial badge of a former EPA consultant, Riley Westman, who had also mysteriously gone off the radar a year earlier. Was this a dumping ground for whistleblowers? Had the lake been used for more than just toxic waste? The FBI was now involved. A full environmental audit of Creighton Chemical was launched. And slowly, the skeletons began to surface, not just in barrels, but in shredded documents, erased hard drives, and silenced employees. A breakthrough came from an unlikely place. Darla's young son, now 13, remembered a blue binder his mother always kept in her car. It was missing after her disappearance. But weeks later, a fisherman found a sealed plastic case washed ashore. Inside, a water-damaged but legible binder. The contents were damning. Photographs of unauthorized waste dumping, names of senior Creighton executives, and handwritten notes detailing an alleged internal cover-up. One phrase was repeated, "They know. They are watching." Public outrage exploded. Protesters gathered outside Creighton Chemical. The media dubbed it the Barrel Murders. Darla's binder contained a list of 5 names. Beside each, notes like fired 2009, missing 2011, or still inside, scared. These were believed to be whistleblowers or potential informants. Of the 5, only one was still employed at Creighton Chemical, Marla Dempsey, a lab technician. When police reached out to her, she was visibly terrified. She admitted Darla had confided in her, sharing fears she was being followed. Marla herself had received anonymous threats in the past and had considered quitting, but couldn't afford to. She agreed to cooperate, on one condition, protection. What she would reveal next would change everything. Marla spoke of a hidden area in the basement of the plant referred to by employees as the room. It wasn't on blueprints, but those who'd worked there long enough knew about it. It was used for containment, a term never clarified. She suspected it held records, or worse, people. She claimed Darla once tried to get inside but was stopped by security. Days later, Darla confided she was afraid her phone was being tapped. That same night, she told Marla, "I think I found what they are hiding. It's not just waste." Marla described the plant's culture as one of intimidation, secrecy, and control. High turnover, aggressive HR, and disappearances. A full sweep of Lake Westcourt was conducted. 3 more barrels were recovered. 2 contained only toxic waste. But one, the largest, contained human bones, fused together with hardened industrial resin. Forensic anthropologists would confirm the remains belonged to 2 separate individuals. One of them matched dental records for Riley Westman. The narrative was no longer just about Darla. It was about a systemic silencing of anyone who stood in the way of a dangerous cover-up. Under mounting pressure, plant supervisor Michael Derns was brought in for questioning again. This time, with new evidence, the tone had changed. Presented with photos from Darla's binder, transcripts of internal emails, and forensic reports, Derns began to sweat. After 6 hours of interrogation, he broke down. Not into confession, but into panic. "You don't understand," he said. "It goes way higher than me. You think I wanted this? They told me to keep her quiet. Just keep her quiet. But who were they? And how far did the rot go?" Investigators found a shredded document in a waste bin outside Derns' office. When pieced together, it appeared to be a contract between Creighton Chemical and a private security firm, Sentinel Response Group. The contract included clauses about employee containment, information extraction, and remediation. What exactly was Sentinel Response Group hired to do? And were they involved in Darla's death? Marla Dempsey provided another name, Terry Langdon, a former data analyst who was let go in 2010. He had reported internal anomalies and raised concerns about plant safety. When investigators tried to contact him, they found his house abandoned. Mail stacked at the door. No sign of where he'd gone. He wasn't the only one. Of the original whistleblower list in Darla's binder, 3 had vanished. No calls. No family contact. Nothing. They were now calling it what it truly was, a pattern. With a warrant and federal backing, investigators searched Creighton Chemical. Behind a steel-reinforced wall in the sub-basement, they found it, the room. There were lockers, torn files, destroyed hard drives, and blood traces. Forensic teams found enough DNA to suggest that at least 2 violent encounters had taken place there. One locker had a name tag, Darla Hennings. In a hidden ceiling panel, a single unmarked hard drive was found. It contained grainy footage from the sub-basement. One clip showed Darla being dragged, conscious but restrained, into the room by 2 masked men. Another showed a man matching Riley Westman's build restrained in a chair. These weren't just industrial safety violations. They were human rights atrocities. News of the tapes spread quickly. The Department of Justice became involved. Creighton Chemical's CEO resigned within 48 hours. Sentinel Response Group's contract was dissolved. But it wasn't enough. One by one, former employees began speaking out. They had stories of threats, unexplained terminations, even break-ins at their homes. The message was clear: silence or suffer. The former CEO, Robert Thatch, was placed under house arrest. Documents recovered from his office revealed he had full knowledge of Sentinel's operations. He approved Darla's termination. He knew about containment. One email chilled investigators. "She won't be a problem after tonight. Dispose according to protocol." Darla's sister started a foundation in her honor to protect whistleblowers. Darla's son, now 14, gave a televised statement that moved the nation. "My mom was scared, but she tried to do the right thing. She died for it. I want the people who did this to be afraid now." Public support surged, but justice still felt far away. A former Creighton truck driver confessed to moving sealed barrels to Lake Westcourt as far back as 2003. He never knew what was inside, just followed orders. He was paid double to keep quiet. Lake Westcourt had become a graveyard long before Darla disappeared. Another whistleblower emerged, Kevin Bram, a former security tech. He confirmed that surveillance footage was routinely deleted, and that some plant visitors were never logged. He also named a high-ranking EPA official as a silent partner in the cover-up. The scandal was bigger than anyone imagined. A federal grand jury was convened. Multiple indictments followed. Charges ranged from manslaughter to obstruction of justice to conspiracy. But some of the key players had already disappeared. And others, those higher up the chain, remained untouched. What started with a barrel by the lake was now a national reckoning. As grand jury hearings began, leaked documents revealed something chilling: a sensitive personnel list, codenamed Orchid File, containing the names of employees deemed potential threats to operations. At least 7 of those listed had either disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances in the last decade. Darla Hennings and Riley Westman were both on it. But so was Marla Dempsey, the surviving whistleblower, under federal protection. But that didn't stop the threats. A cryptic note was left under her motel door. "You should have kept your mouth shut. The lake isn't full yet." Investigators suspected remnants of the private security group Sentinel might still be operating in the shadows. Fear spread across the town. Who else was on the Orchid File, and still alive? Just as the case reached its most critical phase, a fire broke out at the temporary FBI evidence lockup in Westcourt. Several boxes of key physical evidence, including original copies of Darla's binder, were destroyed. Authorities called it an accident. But internal sources claimed the sprinkler system had been disabled hours before the fire began. Was someone inside law enforcement working to protect the conspirators? Among the most elusive figures in the investigation was Vera Langston, Creighton Chemical's former VP of Compliance. Emails revealed she had overseen the shredding of environmental audits and signed off on the employee risk list. She fled the country days before the first arrest. Now hiding in South America, her name was added to an international watch list. But extradition proved complicated. She remained untouchable. An unexpected twist came from inside the DOJ. A junior investigator, Alexis Rhee, leaked a hidden dossier to reporters. It contained proof of internal stalling on the Creighton case, orders to delay subpoenas, stall warrants, and pressure whistleblowers into non-disclosure. Alexis was fired immediately. But her leak forced an emergency congressional hearing. For the first time, the investigation turned toward government collusion. The hearing was explosive. Testimonies from whistleblowers, FBI agents, and even Darla's son painted a picture of intimidation, silencing, and state-level obstruction. When asked why key officials delayed action, one former EPA deputy stammered, "They funded everything. Jobs. Infrastructure. We didn't want to lose them." The cost of loyalty? Lives buried in barrels. A data retrieval specialist recovered backup emails from Darla's old cloud account. Hidden among them was a chain of messages between her and Victor Elmond, a board member at Creighton. In one message, Darla begged for his help. "You said you cared. If anything happens, you're the only one who can expose them." Victor never replied. But now, under oath, he was forced to explain why. Victor Elmond testified before Congress, visibly shaken. He admitted Darla had reached out. He claimed he'd been threatened too, that his family was under surveillance. He even kept a burner phone Darla had mailed him. That phone contained voice memos from Darla, audio logs chronicling her discovery, her fear, and ultimately, her knowledge of 3 covert deaths staged as accidents. They were now treating her case as assassination. A winter storm dropped lake levels dramatically. Near the original discovery site, another barrel surfaced, larger, reinforced, and coated in concrete. Inside were the remains of 2 more individuals. One was confirmed as Terry Langdon, the data analyst from Darla's list. The other was unknown, but carried a Creighton-issued ID, Security Operative, Level 4. The message was clear: not even the enforcers were safe. In a sweeping federal operation, 23 arrests were made nationwide. CEOs, government agents, security contractors. Finally, people were being held accountable. Marla Dempsey, now living under a new identity, submitted a public letter. This wasn't justice, it was survival. And it never should have come to this. But even as some were convicted, the biggest players remained above it all. Was it truly over? Or just the beginning of something even darker? A former Creighton Chemical executive, racked with guilt and declining health, contacted investigators anonymously. He proposed a meeting, on the condition of full immunity. That meeting revealed the existence of Project Barricade, an internal initiative designed to monitor, suppress, and if necessary, eliminate internal threats. Whistleblowers were profiled, surveilled, and in extreme cases, neutralized. The program had direct funding from unnamed Department of Defense affiliates. The implications were staggering. Through a FOIA request, A redacted memo surfaced linking Creighton's waste disposal methods to military testing sites. Darla Hennings had circled a passage that read, "Priority override granted for subterranean disposal. See facility code WSC-L03." WSC-L03 was a restricted zone near Lake Westcourt. Investigators now believe Creighton Chemical may have been burying more than just waste, and possibly conducting experiments in tandem with black budget operations. A journalist embedded in the case was contacted by a whistleblower from Sentinel Response Group. He provided classified training material used for Creighton ops. Modules included neutralization of leaks, psychological suppression techniques, and barrel deployment protocol. The language was clinical, dehumanizing. The whistleblower claimed they used trauma-based methods to frighten employees into silence. From Victor Elman's burner phone, forensic experts restored a final audio log. It was Darla, tired, scared, but clear. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. They said I knew too much. I'm leaving this because people matter more than fear. They poisoned our water. They buried the truth. Don't let them bury me." The audio went viral. Darla's voice became the cry of a movement. An anonymous tip led investigators to a sealed sublevel beneath the now-shuttered Creighton chemical plant. It required 2 biometric verifications, both belonging to former high-ranking employees. Inside, what they would later call the vault. Rows of filing cabinets, data servers, and video reels, records of surveillance, interrogations, and disposal operations. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. One name appeared over and over in vault records: Branford Keats, a former DoD liaison turned private contractor. He had signed off on Project Barricade, issued containment orders, and approved Sentinel response deployments. Keats was never publicly connected to Creighton until now. He was the architect of the cover-up. When confronted, he denied involvement. But one document sealed his fate: a handwritten directive to initiate irreversible containment of DH. In the largest environmental crime sentencing in state history, 14 individuals received federal prison terms, including Keats. Charges ranged from conspiracy to second-degree murder to willful negligence. Marla Dempsey testified remotely. "They stole our safety. They sold our lives to protect their bottom line. But we spoke. And now, they pay." It wasn't enough. But it was something. On the shores of Lake Westcourt, where it all began, a memorial was unveiled. A sculpture of a rusted barrel cracked open with flowers blooming from within. Engraved were the names of the confirmed victims. At its base, Darla's words: "People matter more than fear." Hundreds gathered. Survivors, families, investigators, reporters. For the first time, peace replaced fear. Despite convictions, hundreds of documents remain classified. Several key players vanished during the investigation. The true scale of Project Barricade may never be fully known. Lake Westcourt was drained for further recovery. No more barrels were found. But that didn't mean they weren't out there, somewhere else. One investigator remarked, "This case is closed. But the system that allowed it, that's still wide open." Darla Hennings was buried beside her mother, under a tree they used to picnic beneath. Her son placed the blue binder at her grave, sealed, preserved. The binder is now on display at the National Whistleblower Archive. Her story has been adapted into documentaries, films, and now, this channel's most watched series. And yet, the question remains: how many Darla Hennings are still out there, silenced before anyone knew their names? If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there may need the courage Darla had. Subscribe to True Crime Hub, where silence is never the end, and every buried truth deserves to be unearthed. True Crime Hub, where every secret deserves a reckoning.